Hello and a happy new year from yesterday's airlines. With 2025 now in the past, it is time to briefly reflect on the year that was, and I will in this video be looking at the top 12 models of 2025 that I have acquired. Why 12? Well, it's super difficult to pick 10, and so in this video, which I've done over the last couple of years, I've gone for 12. And so in this vid, we will check out what I consider to be the 12 best models that I have bought in 2025. It's been a great year for 400 scale. Now, if you haven't seen it already, I have actually covered 2025 in detail at the website yesterdaysairlines.com with my look back at the year that was, going through all the different brands, all the different manufacturers, looking at how many models have been made, what geographic regions they've been made for, what different molds they've been using, the different aircraft types that we've seen in this past year, and the new molds that have come on to the market in 2025. So if you haven't seen that review at Yesterday's Airlines, please check that out. I'll chuck a link in the header of this video. It covers everything you need to know about the year that was, except the top 12 models, which we'll be doing in this vid. Now, also, don't forget to chuck a like on this video if you're enjoying the content and subscribe to the channel. It's been a really good year of growth for the channel here at YouTube, so thank you very much to everyone who's been watching the content, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to check out my sponsor for this video, Northeast Diecast. It's been really positive getting sponsors for the vids here, and Northeast Diecast have a great range of second-hand models in both 200 and 400 scale at the site. It's always well worth checking out because new stock's coming on to their site all the time, and you can use the code Yesterday's Airlines 15 for 15% off your order at Northeast Diecast. So check them out and get a great model today. But let's get on and see what I've been buying in 2025 and what I consider to be the best models that I have acquired. Okay, so before we get into looking at my top 12 models of the year, just want to give you a brief overview of my collecting in 2025. And I apologize if this sounds like I'm bragging. I obviously do spend way too much money on model aeroplanes, and the vast majority of the models I acquire are ones I've purchased. I'm not getting sent hundreds and hundreds of models from manufacturers, though I do get sent a few now and then. Looking at my collecting this year, I've so far, I think, acquired about 182 models, which is about the same as I got last year. And you can see when you look at the change year on year amongst at least the bigger brands that it's actually a little surprising. Most of them stay roughly the same, but I've actually acquired more Gemini jets this year, and certainly more HX models this year than I did in the previous year. Aero Classics remains pretty much the same as one of my most important brands, as does NG Models, and I've got less Aviation 400 and less Panda models this year, and less Phoenix, but that's just because of the subject matter. They've stayed, roughly the same. Moving on to the smaller brands, and I should say these are just the new model acquisitions of releases in this year. If you want to know how much I'm getting in terms of older models, then it's getting truly silly. But still, hopefully that will decrease as I've got most of the ones I need. But the biggest change in my collecting in 2025 has been towards the smaller brands and the newer brands. As I talk about in the 2025 year on review piece, there are so many more brands in the scale than there have ever been before. Some of these are quite hard to find, and you really have to pay attention to what they're releasing, but they're releasing often some really good stuff. And brands like 3D Design Deck from Canada and Aero Polaris have really come up in my collecting this year. I've got a lot more of their models, and I think that will continue into next year. I've also got quite a few retailer exclusive brand models from Airshop Diecast and iWings, and then also many of these smaller Chinese brands. So I do collect a lot of Chinese models, creating Dreamwings, Gemini Star, and so on and so forth. You can see there's quite a few new entries making an appearance in my collection here, and model brands that are new to the market like Kylin models and Z2 models, are making an appearance here for the first time. And I think that those brands will be growing quite a lot next year, or this year now, I guess. And so I'm sure I'll be buying more of theirs in 2026 as well. But you can see there's loads of really interesting brands out there, and it really pays to keep an eye out for what's being released, because you never know when your holy grail is going to get released by one of these new brands. So overall, it's been a really good year collecting for myself. I've got a lot of models, a lot of good models, but which models do I think are the models which are my favorite from 2025? Let's get into that now and check those out, and we'll go through these top 12 in the order that they were released. My first choice for model of the year is a February release from Panda Models, the American Airlines McDonnell Douglas MD-11, registered N1761 Romeo. And this is one of many models this year which has come into my collection to replace an older release. In this case, it was an older Gemini Jets release, and it was the first acquisition I made on the wonderful new Panda Models MD-11 mold. And there have been quite a few other Panda MDs released through the year. At the same time as this one, they released a really nice Delta release. There have been others from other brands like C Models with China Airlines. Also, Airshop die-casted a really nice Garuda Indonesia, and there's some China Eastern from Undefined Collectibles as well. And I've got all of those, as you can see, and they could all be models of the year, because this is a really superb new mold from the MD-11, which has now got some competition from the HX Models MD-11 as well. But I really love this new mold from Panda. Panda generally make excellent models, though they're not making anywhere near enough under their own brand name anymore. They're making so many for others, and I'd like to see more of their own. And I do believe they're going to be making more MD-11s soon in 2026. But this model is just beautiful. Obviously, the classic American Airlines delivery is still to be surpassed, and certainly their new one is nowhere near as good. And the MD-11, just a really attractive tri-jet airliner. So this has the great combination of a fabulous mold, wonderful livery, great bit of history with the MD-11's rather tortuous time with American Airlines. Just a fabulous release from February. So that is model number one. Model number two also came into my collection in February in the shape of this wonderful VT Jets Air Sahara Boeing 767-300 registered VT SDL. And again, this is using a Panda Models mold, but one of the models made for another brand, in this case VT Jets. Air Sahara is a really eclectic and unusual choice, and that made it really interesting to be adding to my collection, even though it's slightly outside my collection criteria, I admit. Again, this could be multiple Panda Models mold 767s that have been made throughout the year. The mold, like the MD-11, is excellent. There have been some great releases from C Models like this Air China, and there's also CAAC and China Airlines, and also from Patriot with these Boeing House Colors 767s, and V1400 hopefully will be releasing some very soon, United Airlines, TWA, and such. So there are a lot of options, but some of them, I admit, have been rather obscure. And sometimes that's great, like this Air Sahara, and sometimes it means that I'm slightly annoyed that they're not more mainstream. But this is a really colourful and attractive model, and it's an excellent example of how good the Panda Model 767 looks, and how making models for retailers and for smaller brands can lead to some really interesting and unusual airline release choices, such as this, which can really add that little something extra, that diversity and extra interest to your collection. So I really was very pleased to pick this up from Wings 400, incidentally, in the UK. Thanks very much to them. And it's been a great addition to the collection, and I look forward to adding a lot more 767s in the new year. Model number three fast forwards us to May, and is this JC Wings McDonnell Douglas DC-9-81 unducted fan demonstrator in their house colours, made by JC Wings. Now, this model actually got a review at the website, as did that previous Air Sahara, and quite a few of these models of the year have had reviews at the website, so don't forget to check out the website and see my weekly reviews. I often pick, my favourite models for those reviews. 2025 was a year with a lot of experimentation from different brands, producing some really unique looking models, especially brands like Patriot and NG, but also JC Wings. And I was really pleased with this unducted fan demonstrator MD-80 that they made here. I think the detailing on the engine is really, really nice, and it's a really interesting and novel aircraft with, again, a great history the unducted fan had so much promise and never really came to pass, but it has this amazingly freaky look to it. I guess that's perhaps one of the reasons that it wasn't so successful. It just looks so unusual. And it's really nice to see that JC Wings are willing to go to these unusual places. It would be nice if they got their models out more close to the time that they're announced, but in this case, this model came out pretty much at the time it was announced, and it had a really great finish. And it also happened to use, rather unusually, the old JetX MD-80 mod, which is better than the Gemini JC MD-80 mod. So a really nice and unusual and interesting aircraft, exactly the sort I'd like to get into my collection. Model number 4 is a model that didn't get a weekly review, but did feature here at the YouTube channel in a video. Check that out if you haven't seen it already. And that was a model that you perhaps didn't think would ever get released. An Emirates A380, not by Gemini Jets, because this one uses the new Aviation 400 Airbus A380 model, which again is a really, really impressive beast and comes with magnetic detachable gear. Obviously, Emirates models don't get made a great deal due to licensing constraints, as I think we probably all are aware. But the Aviation 400 A380 really is a superb mold. There have been other Emirates models made this year, also by AV400. I got the counterpart A380 to this in the new colours. They've also made an A350 and more recently an A340-300. So I've got more Emirates models than I usually would get. I also picked up the C models 737-300 as well. So it's actually been a surprising number of Emirates releases this year that I've acquired. But picking one of those and picking an Aviation 400 model that is top of its game, this classic colours Airbus A380 really stands out. I really like what Aviation 400 are doing. They've had a good year and they've released quite a lot of models. They've finally got their magnetic gear out onto market and onto most of their wide body types now. I think the only ones that don't have it are the A330, A340s. Certainly the 777-300 now has it, and this TAAG release is another excellent model from the year I really enjoyed. The A350s have also got it. So liking what AV400 are doing, and these A380s are really impressive. And this Emirates version is my pick of the AV400 models that I picked up this year. Really very, very nice release. Moving into June, and if I had to pick one model out of all the models in this as to be my model of the year, it would probably be this one, because I've got, you know, a real interest in American classic regulated era airlines. And this one, the Pacific Southwest Airlines Mother Grinning Bird Lockheed TriStar N1011-4 from NG Models is just a wonderful release, especially because, as I was saying, with the JC MD-80, they've gone the extra distance and they've molded in the extra belly lounge fairing there, which just looks spectacular. Also, it's got the classic original engine exhausts as well on this TriStar. Now, NG haven't had a great year, and they've released a lot of Chinese models, a lot of Asian models, and not a lot else, it seems. But this one really stood out for me as one of the few non-Asian releases I got of theirs, which is spectacular. And they only made a couple of other TriStars this year, and I could have picked any of those yet again, because I do love their TriStars. The Eastern L1011 they made was also sublime. Hopefully there'll be more of those coming. And they also, of course, made the Northrop Grumman Stargazer, which came again with that extra add-on there as well, with the rocket attached to the belly. So those TriStars were great and really impressive, but there's just so little else that NG has been making recently for the Western collector that is even vaguely classic, and they've had a really poor year in terms of using their molds, certainly. And there were just those 3 TriStars all year, and I think only probably 3 747 SPs and barely anything else that was at all classic. But let's, you know, ignore that for the minute and just look at how wonderful this release came out. Again, this one featured, I think, here at the YouTube channel, so go find that video if you want to learn more about the history of the PSA TriStars. They're quite special and unique, but the finish on this model is just amazing, and it really shows that NG still have got it when they want to, and there still is, I hope, a lot of great stuff coming from them in 2026. Now, it's just as well that I do collect Chinese airliners, or I'd have a lot less models to buy each year, considering the number of Chinese releases. But looking through all the Chinese models that I have acquired this year, it is actually a more of a classic Chinese release which stood out for me, and that was this Undefined Collectibles Fokker 100 in China Eastern colours, B2231, made of course using the JC Wings Fokker 100 model, which I really like. Now, Undefined Collectibles is a great little brand, and I released a Who's Who video about them. Recently they've been making slightly more classic Chinese releases, and there are still so many obvious kind of holy grail classics out there that haven't been made, and in the Chinese market, the China Eastern Fokker 100 was definitely really high up the list as a model I couldn't believe hadn't been made already. So I was super pleased to see it get released by Undefined Collectibles, and super pleased to see that it turned out so well. I really enjoy the Fokker 100 mold from JC. It's a mold I'd love to be seeing used more often, and this model turned out super nice. There's a lot of really interesting Chinese material being produced out there by smaller brands like Undefined Collectibles, YU model, Creating Dreams Wings, C models, Z2 models. There are so many different little brands now, and they produce quite an interesting range. But I admit that when it comes to more unusual types, you tend to see those from little brands like Undefined Collectibles and YU model, and they are great. This is a lovely model. So many models were made this year by brands using other people's molds, and this next model in my favorite models of the year is one of those. It is the iWings Garuda Indonesian Boeing 747-200 PK G Sierra Alpha. It of course uses the HX models 747, and this year has been a really standout year for HX, and they are increasingly producing models for other brands as well. Having said that, there haven't really been enough 747s, or at least enough classic 747s from HX, and I'm hoping that is something that will change. They did make that really nice selection of Pan Am 747-100s, but they all wore basically the same scheme, which is the only down point of those, and they could have been in this list, but the engines are a little glossy. I think that this Garuda, however, encapsulates everything that's right with the mold. It looks really amazing. I really enjoy this mold. Yeah, there can always be tweaks to make things slightly better here and there, but broadly, this is the market leader for Boeing 747s, and I think it's well placed to get some amazing releases out in the year. iWings themselves, another great little brand. This one is a retailer-focused brand. Airplane Diecast is the store behind it, and I produced a Who's Who video here on the channel, so check that out if you haven't seen that already. I incidentally had to, bought this from them. I didn't get it sent for free, much like the previous release, the Undefined Collectibles. Got that from Taobao, got this one direct from them. So postage, not cheap, but the model is really, really impressive. And it is a lovely classic 747 of the sort I hope we see a lot more of this year. And yeah, there's not much more to say. It's a really nice model. Model number 8, also from July, is a Gemini Jets Atlas Air 777-200 freighter, an interactive version. Now, I don't buy a huge amount of Gemini Jets, and most of what they make either isn't up to my standards or isn't in the right space collection-wise, but this model really surprised me with how good it was. I got this from Yankee Victor 400. Thanks very much, YV400. Check them out. And I have to say, it really surpassed my expectations. I really have been enjoying interactive models more and more. And obviously, I do work with my Jinlong model airport, so interactive models look great on that. But overall, I think the whole concept of interactive models is an excellent feature. And tying that together with the JC Wings Gemini 777, which is already an excellent mold, is producing a series of really impressive airline models. This isn't the only interactive 777 I got this year, actually. I also picked up the JC Wings Central Airlines Young Express freighter as well, which was equally lovely. And I've got some interactive models also from HX models and Y Wings, because HX has also got a selection of interactive models. But I decided that of the interactive models I picked up this year, I would give the model year to this Gemini version to give a bit of diversity and show that I don't hate Gemini that much. It's a lovely model. It really is very well finished. The Atlas Air Ski, simple but elegant. Really love the tail design, and it goes so nicely on this model, which is finished superbly. So yeah, Gemini have had a pretty decent year, I think, for them, and they've made some really nice models like this. They're able to exploit that large JC Wings mold catalogue, which is often very good, not always, but often very good, and they can produce some really standard, high standard models. And it must have been a very difficult year for Gemini with all the tariff problems and everything. So the fact that they've been able to get all their models out, quite commendable, I think. And this model was the high point of their release set for me. 4 models left to look at, and the next model gets us into September and is a really surprising model I didn't expect to be able to acquire this year because there are so few Concorde releases. These 4 British Airways Concordes were made for Aviation Retail Direct in the UK using I believe the Socatec mold, which has been updated and looks really, really impressive. Obviously, Concorde's such an iconic airliner, and yet previously we've just had lots of quite ordinary Gemini versions. So I was super pleased to be able to pick up 4 of these ARD 400 Concordes, and I've picked the delivery colours as the model of the year this time round, GBO Alpha Alpha. Yeah, it's a really amazing looking aircraft, obviously. It still doesn't feel that classic, even though it is. But the cheat line scheme from British Airways does give it that more of a classic feel. I really like this Concorde mould. It doesn't use very much. Its ownership is a little bit murky, but it's got some really nice detailing on it. And the finish of these ARD 400 Concordes is super nice. And once again, this illustrates that there are a lot of retailers, a lot of smaller brands getting out there and making models for themselves in their own markets. Now, that can mean that the models are quite expensive. These Concordes were on the pricey side. I think they're around £50 each. And additionally, it can mean that it's difficult to get them if you're not in the market, which they're actually going for, which is why I've had to import models from China, import models from Indonesia, and such, which can be a problem. But it does mean that these models get made, and that is a good thing, because when you see models that are so nice like this, then that is great for the hobby and great when you can get them into your collection. So really enjoyed these ARD 400 Concordes. I think they all look really spectacular, and looking forward to the British Airways HX747s they've got coming as well. Now, I couldn't do my models of the year and not talk about the Phoenix IL-62s. Phoenix rebirth from a company that has been pretty boring historically, the one which has been really diverse, really interesting, and been expanding into really unusual areas of 400 scale, has been fabulous to see. And their IL-62s, perhaps their crowning glory. I'm really loving having an IL-62 basic like this Aeroflot for the first time in 400 scale. And obviously they've got the 62M as well. You've got the detachable tail props to go with those. And it's just a wonderful combination of manufacturer and aircraft type and a willingness to use the molds that they've got. So this was the first release, the Aeroflot version, and there have been quite a few really nice models released since then. I've acquired several of them. I've got the LOT Polish, for example. I've got both of the Chinese versions. I've got an Air Koryu on the way and Air Ukraine on order. And now they've just announced Tarom and Interflug as well. So they've got some really, really nice releases upcoming, and the mold is really superb. It's, again, a combination of an amazing aircraft type, a really well executed design in 400 scale, some lovely classic airlines, and some great aviation history, which is exactly the reason I'm collecting 400 scale in the first place. So I am, so happy that Phoenix have taken on the mantle of producing these new IL-62s coming, after their IL-96 400 mold as well, especially in a year where we've seen a big decrease in Soviet era types. There are no Tupolevs whatsoever. So it's so nice to see that Phoenix at least staying strong with those Soviet era airliners, which often, look so unusual compared to Western types. Great to see. into October, and I've picked this Aero Classics Libyan Arab Airlines Sud Aviation Caravelle 3. Now, Aero Classics is a brand that doesn't always hit the highest notes in terms of quality control and print or mold, but has an amazing diversity and interest in classic aviation, which fits really nicely with my collection criteria. And so I still buy a huge amount of Aero Classics products, and lots of them are still superb. And the Caravelles this year from Aero Classics have been a really good illustration of that. This Libyan Arab, really shines with the gold, but they've made a really excellent selection of Caravelles this year from airlines like Air Algérie, Luxair, SAS, and Sabina. And frankly, if you're looking for classic aircraft types, then there often is nowhere else to go but Aero Classics, and they serve the market really well, producing, a range of airlines and aircraft types that nobody else can match. Who else, for example, is going to make an Air Djibouti Airbus A310? If the model was slightly better, that would again been one of my models of the year. I mean, it's from Djibouti, for crying out loud. That is so cool. But, Aero Classics, they keep on keeping on, really, basically. Like Gemini, they're not open to much criticism. They're not necessarily open to changing what they're doing. They're not necessarily open to improving themselves that much, but they still are able to produce some really fine models, and the sort of models that nobody else has been making in the scale. So I still get a lot of Aero Classics. I'm still very happy with the majority of the purchases I get from them, and they're still producing a lot of great releases. And so we reach model number 12, and the last of my top models of the year. And it is the HX Models Qantas 747-300 VH Echo Bravo uniform, wearing the wonderful Nalanji Dreaming livery. And this model perhaps encapsulates the best in 400 scale this year. Not only do we have a really impressive and nice Boeing 747-300 mold, but we also have, some really spectacular delivery of a livery, which is one of the hardest liveries probably to replicate in the world, the Nalanji Dreaming scheme. Now, I reviewed this model at yesterdaysairlines.com, so again, check that out if you haven't seen that review already. But I think they did a really impressive job here. And of course, it comes not just with that, but also with the overall HX Models package, the wonderful metal stand, the collector's card. So it's a really great finish. And it's not the only Qantas model they made this year, because obviously they also made equally nicely the Wunala Dreaming livery and also the Formula One. Plus, there was also the My Hobby House version with the extra engine. So they made quite a few Qantas 747s, and they've all turned out to be really, really impressive. This illustrates the potential, I think, that these HX 747s have. The factory clearly can deliver some really top-notch output, and the mould itself for their 747s really superb. It's great to see that 400 scale is able to reach these sort of heights where you couldn't really tell, aside from the size, that this isn't 200 scale model. And I think that goes for quite a few of the models that I've picked in this top 12 of the year. But this Nalanji Dreaming, really icing on the cake, a November arrival at the collection, and one of my favourite models of the year by far. Okay, so there are my top 12 400 scale model purchases of 2025, all models released in that calendar year. As you can see, I've tried to spread the love across a variety of different airlines, regions, manufacturers, brands, and it's easy to do because there are so many great models being made in the scale every year. I could have easily picked this list 4 or 5 times over. I hope that you've enjoyed this look at those models, and I hope that it's inspired you to get out there and buy some of these cool models as well. There's a lot of great stuff to look forward to in 2026, so stay tuned to the channel here at Yesterday's Airlines, because I try and report on as much as I possibly can. I want to thank everyone again for watching my content. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I also want to thank the retailers that have worked with me this year. I picked up several of these models here from Beveridge Diecast, the American, and the McDonnell Douglas, Wings 400 for the Air Sahara, Jet Collector for the Libyan Arab, Yankee Victor for the Atlas Air, and Also, we want to thank the manufacturers and brands that work directly with me at the channel as well. Without your help, I wouldn't be able to produce this material. So thank you to everyone who watches and works with me. Really appreciate that, and I hope you've enjoyed the material that I've been able to put out at the channel this year. Thanks very much. That's it for this video. Stay tuned for more content coming soon. But until then, happy collecting and a happy new year to everyone. Goodbye.